All right, let's get into it. When you hear the name Friedrich Nietzsche, you probably picture a pretty intense guy with an even more intense mustache. But I want you to think of him in a different way. See him not just as a philosopher, but as a kind of doctor for civilization. He looked at our culture and saw a sickness, a deep illness, and he was determined to figure out what it was. So today, we're going to explore his radical diagnosis and his prescription for a cure, a complete revaluation of all values. We have to start right here with his most famous and maybe most misunderstood statement. Now, it's so important to get this right. For Nietzsche, this was not some triumphant shout of atheism. He wasn't celebrating. It was a really somber diagnosis. He saw that belief in God, the very thing that gave Western civilization its meaning, its morals, its entire purpose for 2,000 years, was crumbling. And he absolutely knew, that its death would leave a terrifying black hole right at the center of our world. So what happens when that foundation just disappears? Well, for Nietzsche, it meant the entire moral compass of the Western world was about to shatter. Think of it like this. For centuries, our civilization was a ship, and its anchor was a divine plan. It held us steady, it told us where to go. But Nietzsche saw that the anchor chain had snapped, and without it, the ship of humanity was suddenly adrift on a vast, terrifyingly empty ocean. This wasn't just some abstract problem for philosophers. It was a crisis of meaning for every single person. And this really gets to the heart of it. It's not about losing one belief. It's about the very ground beneath our feet giving away. This led Nietzsche to a massive question. If our values didn't come from God, then where did they come from? To figure that out, he had to become something like an archaeologist of morality, digging through history to uncover the hidden and maybe uncomfortable origins of our most cherished ideas. So his investigation led him to this method he called genealogy. Instead of tracing a family tree, he was tracing the family tree of our moral ideas. We tend to think of concepts like good and evil as these timeless universal truths that were just waiting to be discovered. But Nietzsche's radical claim, they weren't discovered at all. They were invented by people for a purpose in a very specific and frankly messy moment in history. So let's just pause on that for a second and ask ourselves, when you call something good, where does that judgment actually come from? Is it compassion, fairness, some kind of divine command? Well, Nietzsche's answer is a lot more unsettling. He argues that our morality wasn't born from some noble ideal, but from a bitter, ancient power struggle between two totally different groups of people. And this slide lays out that struggle perfectly. On one side, you have master morality. These were the values of the powerful, the nobles. For them, good was just another word for themselves, their strength, their pride, their health. And bad was everything else, the weak, the common, the timid. It's a worldview that comes from a powerful yes to life. But then, on the other side, you have slave morality. This was born from the oppressed, the weak. And since they couldn't win through physical force, they waged a kind of psychological war. They took everything the masters valued, power, pride, ambition, and, in a stroke of genius, relabeled it all as evil. The psychological engine that drove this whole moral revolution is a concept Nietzsche called resentment. This isn't just being resentful. No, it's a deep, simmering, and incredibly creative spite. When you're too weak to get your revenge in the real world, you get it in the world of ideas. You invent a whole moral system where your own condition, things like humility, pity, and patience, are magically redefined as virtues. It's a brilliant, world-changing act of psychological jiu-jitsu, and you can see echoes of this everywhere today, right? It's a lens to view how things like public shaming or online callouts can sometimes work as a form of moral vengeance. This quote from his masterpiece, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, is just so raw. It really captures the poison Nietzsche saw at the root of this morality. In his view, the modern call for equality wasn't always some noble ideal. He saw it as the echo of this ancient, hidden desire for revenge by the powerless against the powerful. For Nietzsche, things like Christianity and even modern democracy were the ultimate victory of this slave morality. Okay, so if our old morality is built on this shady history and its divine foundation is gone, what's left? Are we just supposed to fall into despair? Not for Nietzsche, no way. He proposed a new foundation for understanding life itself, a fundamental force that drives everything from the smallest amoeba to the greatest empire, the will to power. Now, we have to be really, really clear about this because this is one of Nietzsche's most misunderstood ideas. The will to power is not just some crude desire to dominate other people. Think of it more as the fundamental energy of life itself. It's the tree pushing its roots through solid concrete. It's the artist struggling to perfect their painting. It's the scientist pushing for a breakthrough. It is that deep internal drive in everything to grow, to become more, to overcome whatever is holding it back. In fact, for Nietzsche, the absolute highest expression of the will to power isn't dominating others. It's mastering yourself. It's the entrepreneur building a company from absolutely nothing, the student mastering a difficult new language. It's anyone pushing past their own comfort zone to learn a new skill. It is the drive to overcome your own weaknesses, your own limitations. Nietzsche called this self-overcoming, and he saw it as the real path to a powerful life. This perspective totally flips the script on how we think about free will. What Nietzsche is suggesting is that every choice you make is really the result of a battle between your own internal drives. Are your strong wills, your discipline, your ambition, your creative urges in charge? Or are your weak wills, your fear, your laziness, your desire for comfort, running the show? For Nietzsche, that's the fundamental question of your character. And this brings us to the ultimate challenge that Nietzsche leaves us with. In a world with no divine commandments, where all our old morals have been exposed as human inventions, we're left with both a terrifying freedom and a massive responsibility. We can't just inherit our values anymore. We must become creators of new ones. Nietzsche imagined a new kind of person for this future, what he called a real philosopher. This person wouldn't just sit around analyzing the world. They would have the strength to give it new meaning. They would stare into the void of existence and have the courage to create new values, to declare, this is our new purpose, this is our new goal. This, for Nietzsche, is the ultimate expression of the will to power. This represents a huge shift in how we see ourselves. For thousands of years, humanity has lived as creatures, just following the rules laid down by a creator. Nietzsche's challenge is for us to now become creators. It's a staggering responsibility for sure, but for him, it's also the only path left to human greatness. But this brings up a final, terrifying question. How can you even know if the life you're creating is a good one? And for that, Nietzsche gives us his ultimate test. He calls it the eternal recurrence. Imagine a demon creeps into your room one night and tells you that this life you're living now, you will have to live it again and again, for all eternity. Every joy, every sorrow, every mistake, every single moment, completely unchanged. Would this news crush you? Would you despair? Or would you fall to your knees and say, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine? To live in such a way that you would joyfully welcome its infinite repetition, that is Nietzsche's final challenge, not just for philosophers, but for every single one of us.